Rimuru, the hero copycat by RimuruEdward6. All for one POV. The commotion at the front continued to escalate. All Might's relentless assault drew the attention of my operatives, scattering them like leaves in a storm. Meanwhile, I monitored the suppression chamber, confident in the security measures I'd put in place to keep Rimuru contained. But then, something unexpected happened. The camera feed flickered, and the door to Rimuru's cell slid open, not from an external attack, but from within. My eyes narrowed as two of my own operatives stepped into view, weapons drawn. But instead of securing her, they turned on the guards stationed outside the chamber. The sudden betrayal threw the room into chaos, my loyal followers clashing with those who had defected. Through it all, Rimuru sat calmly, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Interesting, I murmured, leaning forward in my chair. She stood slowly, her movements deliberate, as if savoring the moment. The suppression field crackled faintly around her, but she didn't seem bothered. Her golden eyes swept over the chaos, and with that same infuriating smile, she stepped out of the chamber. The defectors formed a protective ring around her, cutting down anyone who tried to approach. One of my loyal operatives managed to get close, shouting, "Traitors! You'll pay for this." Before being silenced by a precise strike. Rimuru stopped just outside the chamber, her hands resting casually at her sides. "You know," she said, her voice calm and carrying over the sounds of fighting, "for someone who prides himself on control, you're not very good at keeping it, are you?" I clenched my fists, my gaze locked on the screen. "So, this was your plan all along," I murmured, more to myself than anyone else. She tilted her head slightly, as if hearing my thoughts, and glanced up at the camera. Her smile widened, and she raised a hand in a mock salute. "See you soon, all for one," she said, her tone dripping with confidence. Then she turned and walked down the corridor, her new allies following close behind. The screen cut out, static filling the monitor as I sat in silence. For the first time in years, a flicker of genuine frustration burned in my chest. "She's turned them against me," I said softly, the words tasting bitter on my tongue. "Clever, Rimuru. Very clever. But this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Enjoy your freedom," I murmured, my voice low and cold. "Because when I catch you again, there will be no escape." This wasn't just a game anymore. Rimuru had crossed a line, and I would make sure she paid for it. One way or another. The betrayal unfolding on the screen was infuriating. My followers turning on one another, aiding Rimuru in her escape, it was unthinkable. Yet, as I watched, something in their movements, in their eyes, gave me pause. I leaned closer to the monitor, studying their expressions. There was no hesitation, no conflict in their actions. Their loyalty, their years of dedication to me, seemed to vanish in an instant. And then I saw it. A faint glaze over their eyes, a telltale sign of something unnatural. My frustration twisted into cold understanding. "Mind control," I murmured, the pieces clicking into place. Rimuru hadn't turned them against me through persuasion or ideology. She had used a quirk, perhaps her own or one she'd copied. This wasn't defection. It was manipulation. "How clever," I muttered, though my voice carried more irritation than admiration. "You knew you couldn't outmaneuver me with brute force, so you found another way." I turned to the communicator on my desk, pressing a button to connect to Overseer. His voice came through almost immediately, strained from the chaos. "Yes, my lord." "Mind control," I said curtly. "The defectors are not acting of their own will. Rimuru is using a quirk to manipulate them. Focus on neutralizing her influence." There was a brief pause, then Overseer's voice returned, steadier this time. "Understood, my lord. We'll recalibrate suppression devices to counteract mental interference." "Do it quickly," I commanded, cutting the connection. I leaned back in my chair, my frustration simmering just beneath the surface. Rimuru's strategy was bold, but it came with risks. Mind control quirks, while effective, often had limitations. Distance, duration, and the mental resilience of the target could all play a role. And once I found the source of her control, I would exploit its weakness. "You're resourceful, Rimuru," I murmured, watching the static-filled screen. "But resourcefulness will only get you so far. Mind control may win you allies for now, but it won't save you in the end." The game was shifting again, and while she had won this round, I would ensure the next one ended in my favor. You can run, you can manipulate, but you cannot escape me, I said softly, my voice a promise as I began crafting my next move. The trap would be set. And this time, there would be no escape. As I sat in the quiet of my chamber, the remnants of chaos still echoing through the facility, my mind churned. Rimuru's escape wasn't simply a matter of clever planning, it defied the very laws of control I had placed upon her. The suppression devices should have rendered her powerless. That was their design, their purpose. Yet somehow, she had exerted influence over my operatives, bending them to her will. How? I murmured to myself, my voice low and cold. I replayed the scene in my mind, focusing on the faint glaze in my followers' eyes, the subtle signs of manipulation. It was unmistakable, mind control. But how had she done it under suppression? Her quirk, analytical copycat, was extraordinary. It allowed her to analyze and replicate quirks, even wielding them with precision. However, suppression devices specifically targeted neural pathways connected to quirk activation, severing the connection between the user and their abilities. By all logic, she should have been helpless. Yet she wasn't. I steepled my fingers, leaning forward as the pieces began to align. Rimuru was unique, her quirk itself was an anomaly. Analytical copycat wasn't a mere replication quirk, it was a mastery of understanding, a deconstruction of quirks at their fundamental level. Perhaps. A slow smile spread across my face as the realization dawned. Her quirk isn't bound by conventional limitations, I murmured. She doesn't just copy quirks, she rewrites them. If her quirk allowed her to understand and reframe abilities on a conceptual level, then suppression would only affect the surface manifestation of her powers. The essence of her quirk, the knowledge she gained, would remain intact, buried beneath the suppression. And if that knowledge extended to quirks she had already analyzed, she could potentially activate simpler or less powerful versions, slipping beneath the suppression's threshold. Clever, Rimuru, I said softly, the corners of my mouth curling into a sinister smile. You've found a way to operate in the shadows of control. Limited, yes. But not helpless. I stood, turning toward the remaining monitors as a new sense of intrigue filled me. Her defiance wasn't just rebellion, it was ingenuity, a demonstration of her ability to adapt and evolve even under the tightest constraints. But every strength has a weakness, I murmured, my voice low and deliberate. And I will find yours. Her escape was a setback, but it wasn't the end. If anything, it was a challenge, one that I intended to meet with full force. The game was far from over, and Rimuru's ingenuity would soon face the weight of my resolve. All for one POV. As I studied the monitors, piecing together the details of Rimuru's unexpected escape, her voice suddenly broke through the static, clear and mocking. Copycat here. Your monitors and communication devices have been compromised. Success, all for one. I froze, my eyes narrowing as her words echoed through the chamber. The monitors flickered, the images of my operatives and the facility dissolving into static. A faint hum crackled through the speakers before the screens went dark. Rimuru, I murmured, my tone low and sharp. She had done it again, turned my own systems against me, using her quirk to infiltrate the very tools I relied upon to maintain control. The precision of her attack was unmistakable. But this wasn't just sabotage. This was a statement. Compromised, I muttered, the word bitter on my tongue. Impressive, Rimuru. But you forget one thing. I turned to the backup systems I had in place, redundant systems that no amount of quirk manipulation could touch. With a flick of a switch, the monitors lit up again, displaying only static. She hadn't been able to reach these, at least not yet. Her message was clear, she wanted me to know she could infiltrate my stronghold. She wanted me to feel the weight of her defiance. But I would not give her the satisfaction. Success is a fleeting thing, my dear, I said softly, my voice cutting through the silence of the chamber. You've won a battle, yes. But the war is far from over. I turned away from the monitors, my mind already working through the implications. If she could compromise my systems once, she could do it again. I would need to adapt, to counter her ingenuity with strategies of my own. Let's see how long you can keep this up, Rimuru, I murmured, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Because no matter how clever you think you are, you cannot outmatch me. Her message had been received. But it was my move now. And when I struck back, I would make sure she understood the cost of defiance. The static on the monitors was infuriating, But as I reviewed the events leading to Rimuru's escape, one detail stood out, a subtle but critical observation. She had been using more than one quirk at once. I replayed the scene in my mind, focusing on the moments when my defected operatives moved in unison, their actions perfectly synchronized under her control. At the same time, the door to the suppression chamber had been overridden with a level of precision that suggested another quirk entirely. And then there was the speed. She was switching between abilities faster than the supposed limits of her analytical copycat. Those intervals she had hinted at in previous encounters, 5 seconds between each switch, they were a lie. My hands tightened into fists as the realization sank in. She's been holding back, I murmured, my voice cold with annoyance. All this time, she's been playing a game of misdirection. Rimuru had crafted an image of herself that was both formidable and flawed, a calculated deception designed to make others underestimate her. And it had worked. Even I had accepted the idea that her quirk came with constraints. But now, as I pieced it together, the truth became clear. Her ability to analyze and copy quirks wasn't just surface-level replication. It was mastery, understanding, rewriting. She wasn't bound by the same rules as other quirk users because her power operated on a deeper level. And those supposed limits, they were nothing more than a smokescreen. I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. Clever girl, I murmured, my voice tinged with both irritation and admiration. Her escape wasn't just an act of defiance, it was a demonstration. A statement that she was no longer the creation I had once controlled. But every illusion has its cracks, I said softly, my eyes narrowing. And every strength has its weaknesses. If she was capable of wielding multiple quirks and switching between them seamlessly, then her stamina, her focus, or her mental capacity had to be taxed. No one, not even Rimuru, could operate at that level indefinitely. I will find your breaking point, Rimuru, I murmured, standing as the static on the monitors continued to flicker. And when I do, you will realize that no amount of misdirection can save you. Her cleverness was admirable, but it wouldn't save her from what came next. The game was still mine to control, and she had only ensured that my next move would be devastating. The static on the monitors flickered again, and I focused on the live feed still available. Rimuru's voice had taunted me moments ago, but as I watched, something inexplicable occurred. One moment, she was in the corridor, flanked by the defected operatives she had manipulated. The next, she was gone. No warning. No visible quirk activation. I scanned the remaining cameras, switching between feeds in search of her. And then I saw her, on the other side of the building, standing alongside Hawks and All Might. I froze, my gaze narrowing as I processed the impossibility of what had just happened. How? I murmured, my voice barely audible. Teleportation. No. The suppression devices would have dampened any quirk powerful enough to move her that distance instantly. A decoy. Unlikely, given the precision and timing. And yet, there she stood, calm and collected, as if she had never been in the suppression chamber at all. Rimuru raised her hand in a mock wave, her golden eyes glinting with amusement as she looked directly into one of the functioning cameras. Hawks stood beside her, his feathers bristling in readiness, while All Might loomed like an unyielding wall of determination. Rimuru's voice echoed through the compromised speaker system, sharp and teasing. Miss me already, all for one. The words dripped with confidence, and I could feel the mockery in her tone. She knew exactly what she was doing, sowing doubt, pushing me to question the limits of her abilities. But there was something else in her expression, something more deliberate. She wanted me to see her like this. Interesting, I said softly, leaning back in my chair. You're making this personal, Rimuru. Very well. If she had truly bypassed the suppression devices, if she had somehow moved across the facility without triggering a single alarm, then her quirk was even more versatile and dangerous than I had anticipated. But this wasn't just about her abilities. It was about control. Enjoy your victory, I murmured, a slow smile spreading across my face. Because it won't last. Her clever tricks and calculated maneuvers had created chaos, but chaos alone wouldn't win this war. She had shown her hand. And now, it was my turn to respond. Let the games continue, Rimuru, I said, my voice low and cold. But remember, every move you make brings you closer to me. As I watched Rimuru stand alongside Hawks and All Might, Her calm defiance radiating even through the static-filled monitors. A thought struck me, a realization that simmered with equal parts pride and irritation. Her quirk was ready. No longer the fledgling ability I had once shaped and nurtured, it had grown into something formidable. A force that could rival my own. Analytical copycat, I murmured, the name of her quirk rolling off my tongue like a challenge. It was no ordinary ability, no mere replication. What she wielded wasn't just power, it was mastery. The ability to analyze, understand, and wield quirks with a level of precision that rivaled my own all for one. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers as I considered the implications. In practice, her quirk was disturbingly similar to mine. Where I took quirks and made them my own, she dissected them, rewrote them, wielded them with unparalleled finesse. And now, she was using that power against me. I am proud, I admitted softly, my voice carrying through the empty chamber. And yet, I am irritated. How far you've come, Rimuru. I had created her, molded her potential, and in doing so, I had inadvertently set the stage for my greatest challenge. She wasn't just defying me, she was mirroring me. Her methods, her strategies, even the way she used her quirk, it was as though she had taken the very essence of my power and refined it into something uniquely her own. A slow smile spread across my face as I stood, the weight of the moment settling over me. You've become a force to be reckoned with, my dear, I murmured, my voice a mix of admiration and menace. But remember this, while your quirk may be the only one that can match mine, it is still incomplete. She had mastered much, but she hadn't faced the full weight of what I could do. And while her quirk was similar to mine in many ways, it lacked the raw dominance that came with absolute control. You are my creation, I said, my voice cold and sharp. And as proud as I am of your progress, I will not allow you to forget where it began. The pride I felt was undeniable, but it was tempered by the irritation of seeing her use what I had nurtured against me. The game was evolving, and so was she. But I was far from finished. Come, Rimuru, I murmured, my smile widening. Let us see which of us truly understands power. All for one POV. As I observed the monitor, my gaze locked onto Rimuru and her defiant smirk, something unexpected occurred. The figures around her, Hawks, All Might, and even my defected operatives, stiffened. Their movements halted abruptly, as if an invisible hand had gripped them and rendered them immobile. They were frozen. Even the ever-dynamic Hawks, with his constant twitch of feathers, stood still, his expression frozen in mid-concentration. All Might, the embodiment of unyielding resolve, remained locked in place, his fist half-raised. Rimuru, however, moved freely, stepping through the still figures with a casual ease. My eyes narrowed, my mind racing to comprehend what I was seeing. What is this? I murmured, leaning closer to the screen. The suppression devices couldn't have malfunctioned, those systems were redundant and layered. This was something else entirely. Rimuru's golden eyes glinted as she walked toward the nearest camera, her expression calm and deliberate. She tilted her head slightly, as if she knew I was watching. Do you see it now, all for one? Her voice echoed through the chamber, carried by my compromised speakers. The difference between us. I clenched my fists, irritation simmering beneath my otherwise composed exterior. You've done something new, I said aloud, speaking to the image of her on the screen. Another quirk. One I didn't anticipate. She smiled faintly, her gaze steady. Close, she said, her voice calm and confident. It's not a new quirk, it's a deeper understanding of an old one. I felt a flicker of irritation mixed with intrigue. You've expanded your abilities, I murmured, more to myself than to her. She raised her hand, gesturing to the frozen figures around her. They're not hurt, she said. Just paused. It's a side effect of digging deeper, of refining what I can do. Call it precision control. I gritted my teeth, my mind racing to analyze her words. She had refined her mastery of quirks to such an extent that she could manipulate time, space, or perception on this scale. Impressive, I said softly, my voice laced with both irritation and admiration. You continue to evolve, Rimuru. But even this has its limits. Her smirk widened, and for a moment, I saw the fire in her golden eyes burn even brighter. Maybe, she said, turning away from the camera. But you'll have to catch me to find out. With that, she walked out of frame, leaving the frozen figures and a silent challenge in her wake. I stood in the stillness of my chamber, the monitors flickering as her actions replayed in my mind. She's become more than a match, I admitted quietly, a slow smile spreading across my face. But even the strongest must fall eventually. Her abilities were impressive, yes, but they weren't unstoppable. The game wasn't over. Not yet. Her voice echoed through the chamber once more, calm and deliberate, yet dripping with the confidence that had come to define her. I'll take my hero co-workers and call it a day, she said, her tone light, as if the chaos she had caused was merely a minor inconvenience. But don't worry, all for one, I will always be watching. I clenched my fists, the edges of my smile tightening as her words lingered in the air. She spoke as though she had already won, as though her escape and her newfound abilities placed her beyond my reach. The monitor flickered, and for a brief moment, I caught a glimpse of her walking away with Hawks and All Might, the latter finally regaining his movement, his towering frame as imposing as ever. Hawks flanked her, his feathers bristling with readiness, while Rimuru led the way, her steps unhurried, her expression calm. She had disrupted my plans, escaped my grasp, and left my stronghold in disarray. And yet, her parting words carried a weight that both irritated and intrigued me. Always watching. I exhaled slowly, the tension in my chest transforming into a cold determination. You've grown bold, Rimuru, I murmured, my voice low and sharp. But watching is not enough. Sooner or later, you will have to act. And when you do. I turned away from the monitors, the faint flicker of static behind me as I stepped into the shadows of my chamber. I will be ready. Her ability to orchestrate such a precise and audacious escape was remarkable, yes, but it also revealed much about her limits. For all her power and cleverness, she still had weaknesses I would uncover and exploit. I will always be watching too, my dear, I thought, my lips curling into a slow, deliberate smile. And when the time comes, I will remind you who truly holds the power. The game continued, and I was more than ready for the next move. Hawks Pav. The moment we were out of sight, clear of the industrial facility and its lingering chaos, I felt the tension ease ever so slightly. All Might walked ahead, his imposing frame leading the way, but my eyes were fixed on Rimuru. She was keeping pace, but barely. Her steps were slower, her shoulders trembling just enough for me to notice. And then, without warning, she collapsed. Rimuru! I shouted, catching her before she hit the ground. Her body was limp, her silver hair falling over her face as I carefully lowered her to the ground. Her golden eyes were half-closed, flickering with exhaustion. She was mumbling, her words slurred but audible. Might have overdone it a bit. Overdone it. I muttered, my heart racing. You pushed yourself way too far, Rimuru. All Might turned back, his expression shifting from resolve to concern as he crouched beside us. Hawks, is she? She's out cold, I said, keeping my voice steady despite the worry clawing at me. Probably burned through too much energy using her quirks. Whatever she did in there, it wasn't easy. All Might nodded solemnly. She saved herself, and us. But it looks like it came at a cost. I brushed a stray strand of hair from her face, her breathing shallow but steady. You always push yourself too hard, I muttered, shaking my head. Her mumbling continued, barely audible now. Always, watching, can't stop. I clenched my jaw, the weight of her words settling over me. She wasn't just fighting all for one, she was fighting herself, her limits, her need to stay 10 steps ahead of everyone else. We need to get her somewhere safe, I said, standing with Rimuru cradled in my arms. She's not going to recover out here. All Might nodded. I know a place. Let's move quickly. As we took off, I couldn't help but glance down at her, her usually confident expression replaced by one of vulnerability. You did good, Rimuru, I whispered. But you're not doing this alone anymore. Not while I'm around. For now, she was safe. But I knew her well enough to know this was far from the end of her fight. As we moved to a safe location, All Might leading the way, I noticed something sticking out of Rimuru's pocket. A small, folded piece of paper, barely visible against the fabric of her jacket. Carefully, I shifted her in my arms and pulled it out. The handwriting was unmistakably hers, neat, deliberate, and as calculated as everything she did. Unfolding it, I quickly scanned the note. Used a quirk to bypass the limit of suppression, but that quirk has a big drawback. Once it's no longer needed, all the energy used during the duration is taken again at once. My heart sank as the words hit me. Of course, I muttered under my breath. Rimuru, you genius idiot. All Might glanced back at me. What's that? I held up the note briefly before tucking it back into her pocket. A little explanation, I said grimly. She used a quirk to override the suppression field, but it came at a cost. The second she didn't need it anymore, all the energy she burned through hit her at once. All Might frowned, his expression darkening. She forced herself beyond her limits. Yeah, I said, tightening my grip on her unconscious form. And now she's paying for it. The realization made me sick. She'd pulled off an impossible escape, defying All for One and his suppression devices, but it had come at a massive personal cost. This wasn't just exhaustion, it was the backlash of a quirk designed to extract every ounce of energy she had. You didn't have to go this far, I muttered, my voice barely audible. You're not alone, Rimuru. You don't have to carry this weight by yourself. As we reached the safe house, I laid her down carefully, her breathing still shallow but steady. All Might watched silently, his expression a mix of admiration and concern. She's strong, he said quietly. Stronger than most. But even the strongest can fall if they push themselves too hard. I nodded, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Yeah, she's strong. But she's also reckless when it comes to protecting the people she cares about. The note weighed heavy on my mind. She had known the risks, and she had taken them anyway. Not because she wanted to, but because she thought she had no choice. Well, guess what, Rimuru? I said softly, my voice steady with determination. You're not doing this alone anymore. We're in this together, whether you like it or not. I folded the note and tucked it into her pocket again, a silent promise to myself that I wouldn't let her take risks like this without backup. She wasn't just fighting for herself, she was fighting for all of us. And I wasn't about to let her fight alone.